I saw a post on Facebook about a loan officer who was trying to work with a real estate agent. The real estate agent said, well, it's always a one-way street with you loan officers. Leads coming from me, going to you. I immediately responded and said, you need to look at Listing Booster. We've got the answers for this. After my post, immediately this showed up. That's right, guys. Listing Booster will cement relationships with real estate agents because you're sending leads their way, and oh, by the way, it generates a shit ton of leads. If you're looking for good relationships with real estate agents and getting all those leads, all you have to do is click this banner right over there or on Facebook right up above for a one-on-one with us. Listing Booster is a solution to your woes. Now, you have a compliance department at your company, don't you? And your compliance department, they need to say no in order to maintain their relevance. Think about it. If they said yes all the time to everything, well, there'd be no need for a compliance department. Therefore, we get no's. In some cases when they should be saying yes, especially right now, right here, today. Because things have changed. Is your compliance department up to speed with the changes? Mick Mulvaney, the director of the CFPB, just came out with a sweeping and polar opposite position on how the CFPB will operate under his tenure with a 1,100-word document that is music to the ears of both consumers looking to borrow other people's money and those who lend it. Now, I'm not kidding here, guys, when I say it feels like the clouds have parted and we are now seeing sunshine for the first time in years.
Behold his mighty hand!
First, he says he's going to give equal consideration to those he regulates as he does consumers. What a novel idea, representing everybody. Now, of course, there's detractors like Paul Bland of Public Justice, and he says, this is a great loss. The CFPB was created with the purpose of having an agency that focuses on prioritizing consumer protection. Mulvaney seems to want to turn the CFPB into another agency that ends up caring much more about the industry's interests than consumers. Well, first of all, that's not what Mulvaney said. In fact, that's the opposite of what Mulvaney said. And further, Paul Bland, well, he's a moron. Now, I'm going to qualify my statements. Under the previous director's directives, where lenders were deemed the bad guys, pitting consumers against lenders, loans were offered to fewer people, squeezing out those on the lower economic rungs, the ones who needed the most help. Loans were more expensive both in obtaining these loans via junk and third-party fees and in the interest rate, the amount the consumer pays over the life of the loan. Now, bank formations, they stalled, and many smaller lending institutions found it too difficult to compete with the mandated higher costs of operations. This means borrowers had fewer options and less competition for their services. No clear direction was given to lenders to avoid enforcement actions, forcing many large lenders to scale back production and offerings for consumers, or just simply vacating the space. And finally, restitutions. Though in the billions, much of it seemed to get funneled to special interest groups with certain political leanings. My friends, everything I just said is absolutely true. None of this is consumer protection. In fact, it's nothing short of consumer sabotage. And people like Paul Bland, well, they're pissed because it's groups like his with political slants that are no longer going to be benefactors of funds from the CFPB under Director Mulvaney. He and the CFPB were nothing more than fairy tale-esque sheep in wolves' clothing. Now, for example, Mulvaney says the people we regulate should have the right to know what the rules are before being charged with breaking them. What in the hell is wrong with that? Let me repeat it. The people we at the CFPB regulate should have the right to know what the rules are before being charged with breaking them. This is complicated because that implies this was not the case under the last director, and in fact it was not. CFPB Director Mulvaney goes on to say, and compliance departments, listen close here, because this goes to the core of all your job descriptions. Mulvaney says, when it comes to enforcement, we will be focusing on quantifiable and unavoidable harm to consumers. If we find that it exists, you can count on us to vigorously pursue the appropriate remedies. If it does not, we won't go looking for excuses to bring lawsuits. Now I want you to ask yourself, before you look at the next product or process, and I'm talking to you, Joan and Jane compliance departments all across the country, when you're looking at that product, ask yourself, is this harming a consumer or is it helping a consumer? Now I know this is going to be difficult, because you're all hardwired to say no to things, and you get confused because you're still trying to interpret regulations and guidelines under corduroy, which, by the way, is an impossible task. So ask yourself, is this truly hurting consumers? Because the new director just clarified his position. If it's not hurting consumers, we're going to stand down. And further, when Mulvaney said, on regulation, it seems that the people we regulate should have the right to know the rules before we charge them with breaking them. What he's really saying here is he's going to have more formal rulemaking on which financial institutions can rely, and less regulation by enforcement, which is what we've come to know. Now, compliance departments, did you hear this? Seriously, did you hear this? You no longer have to, I don't know, double as a seer or a charlatan or a clairvoyant or a prophet. Now, it's going to be hard here because it's always been your ability to interpret the uninterpretable that has led to your pay and your security. But you don't need to do that anymore, you see? Again, keep your head above the water here. Does this harm consumers? That's what Mulvaney wants you to ask yourself. Does this, in fact, harm consumers? That's the question that you need to lead and end with any thought on compliance as you're going forward. So yes, guys, in writing, things have in fact changed drastically. You lenders out there, you're no longer public enemy number one. You actually have an administration right now that appreciates all the hard work that we know you guys have been doing for years. This should be music to your and your compliance department's ears if you handle it the right way. Listen, guys, if you're meeting us for the first time, do me a big favor. Subscribe up here. We're going to send this to you every day. No strings attached. We're not going to spam you. You get our show, a little sales nourishment. It's good stuff. Keeps you abreast of everything in the mortgage industry. And if you appreciate what we do, we would very much appreciate it if you would forward this on to other people via email, or if you're seeing it on Facebook, go ahead and share it. When you share it, you can always tag people down at the bottom, other real estate agents and lenders. That's a big help to us so we can keep bringing this to you. With that said, we will catch you on, Tuesday here at the National Real Estate Post. Ciao.